going on, Ben?
What's up, fellas? Thanks for having me on again.
What's up,
It's
Ben?
kind of such a busy week that, now we're talking about the renderings, but they got a quarterback's coach. They got an offensive coordinator. They're still looking for a defensive coordinator. There's a lot to get into. Why don't we start with the offense and how they came to David Blau and what your thoughts on David Blau now running the offense?
Obviously it's, a fascinating move to go to, to move on from Cliff Kingsbury, highly experienced. We can debate what was or wasn't his fault this year and all those things, but to go from that to a guy who's never even been a position coach before. I think what's interesting, I haven't really asked this yet, but what's the equation of years in the NFL to years of coaching? We focus so much on the fact that he's only been a coach for a couple of years, but he played in the NFL for 5 years. He was a backup quarterback, so we kind of understand he's doing a lot, not coaching necessarily, but he's doing a lot of the behind the scenes stuff in that role because he wasn't playing that often. I don't know. It's really interesting that they did this, and it would be great to know. We haven't talked to them, obviously. If they would be honest, how much was this? They were just sort of frustrated with where things were with Cliff. They didn't see eye to eye, or hey, we just can't let this guy out of the building. And you see so many of these 29, 30-year-olds right now getting interviewed for OC or head coaching jobs. So maybe they're ahead of the curve on some level. They just locked up their guy. I don't know. It's fascinating. It's a huge risk, but it's interesting.
How big of a year do you think this is for DQ?
I don't think it's crazy to say that he put himself on the clock a little bit by moving on from Kingsbury. I don't know that it necessarily means another year of the losing record and he's out. But it's certainly going to get loud if that's to happen, because last year was obviously this year was obviously so incredibly disappointing.
Right.
But yeah, look, Josh Harris, I think in general is a pretty patient person. I always remind myself he was willing to do the process with the Sixers for 3 years, meaning take the losses, know your product stinks. You're going to take a box office hit for that as well, but he was willing to do it. So I imagine he'll be patient, but you have to think that Dan Quinn, in this day and age where coaches don't last, they'll have a lot of grace period. I would think he's kind of on the clock.
Hey, Ben, for defensive coordinator, give me the Commanders' dream hire, their realistic hire, and a dud hire.
Sure. Well, look, I think if they were to get Brian Flores, he's the number one guy out there. He might be the number one defensive coordinator. Look, the defense looks great and it's fun. I think there are questions. You heard Ryan Fitzpatrick, I'm sure the other day, kind of go off on his view of playing under Brian Flores. It's not so great necessarily. People change, people evolve, so the Commanders have to do their due diligence on that. But obviously, schematically and all that, he would be a lot of fun. They obviously have to get a lot more people. Realistic, I keep looking at Jeff Ulbrich, the defensive coordinator with the Falcons. He's still under the Falcons' control until they figure out their own head coaching situation. Then maybe he stays on as DC there. But, when Dan Quinn's already having to change everything not necessarily, he's having to look a lot at the offense because of David Blau. He's going to have to spend more time over there realistically to make sure that thing is going well. I don't think he's necessarily going to want to have somebody on defense he's not familiar with, or that we're completely revamping everything, right? Brian Flores would be changing the defense. A guy like Ulbrich or Raheem Morris, they're kind of keeping things somewhat the same because it's the same family tree, coaching tree. But, so that would be that. A dud, I don't know, himself calling plays?
Yeah.
That's a dud. Okay.
Well, I just mean that would go from a PR perspective. Be like,
right.
Really? Okay. Well, that's not that interesting, but okay, sure.
All right. So where do you stand on the free agents? They have over 30 free agents of their own. I think most of us assume they're going to move on from most of them, but you got to fill a roster out. But what's interesting is we were debating it, and kind of the bigger names at the top of it, Debo, Bobby Wagner, and a guy like Cakes. I just assumed we were moving on from Bobby Wagner, and I don't disrespect Cakes at all. He says he thinks there's a very realistic chance they could bring him back.
Well, I think this is where it depends on what's the defensive plan. If it's something in the realm of what Dan Quinn has been doing this time, I do kind of wonder if there is a world where he does come back more so maybe than I did from the start of the year, even or midway. Look, obviously he's still really, really good as a run defender, excellent tackler.
Right.
His instincts are off the charts. All those kinds
Great
of
in the
things.
locker room, all the intangibles.
Right,
Yeah.
all those things. I think the challenge is going to be, and I think this is the case for a couple positions. They have, you said they got 30 free agents. It's not realistic that they're going to solve all their problems in one season.
For sure.
That's the case for any kind of team in an offseason, but they have a lot. So if that's the case, you may have to look at a few positions and say, okay, we're good here. We could do better, but maybe we're good here. And that's one where, what you have to wonder, can they hide him a little bit better in pass coverage? Can they maybe take him out on some obvious passing downs the way they did in the past? So I don't think it's crazy, but if it's a different scheme altogether, then I would probably assume he's probably not back.
So would you say on the whole, it's like, I don't know, 10, 15% chance? Just, I know we don't know the scheme, so that's like impossible, but I'm just sort of, is your instinct it's much less likely than likely at this point?
I think that we all harp on the downside more than they do.
Yeah.
So I don't know to what degree. Look, obviously also his issues in pass coverage get highlighted even more when there's no pass rush and the quarterback has time to look for those kind of matchups. So if they can get better pass rush, right, then that becomes less of an issue, you would think. But yeah, that's what's interesting. Is like, how much do you weigh the good stuff with the run defense and the leadership and all that versus those handful of plays where you're like, oh boy, that's a terrible matchup, and he got beaten coverage. Look, at some point they have to move on. I just don't know if it's going to be right now.
Are there any on that list of the 30-some free agents that you think pretty much are a lock to come back?
Oh, boy. Throw me out some names because I think Mariota's probably gone.
What about Tress Way?
Oh, I have to assume he's back. Tress will be here till the
he's going to be here. Yeah.
I talked to Tress, remember, like late in the season about the new stadium. He goes, oh, I wish I was here to see it. I'm like, what are you talking about? You're probably still be playing by then.
Right.
All right, I'll give you names. Andrew Wiley, Jonathan Jones, Dietrich Wise, Jacob Martin, Noah I, Trent Scott, Chris Paul, Chris Rodriguez.
So I think that Jacob Martin's certainly interesting. He was, the rare sort of win this year that they had in free agency. He's not a young guy, but he's under 30, which for this team counts as a child. He impressed. I don't know if it's a lock he's back, but I would think that would be one of the bigger priorities because, as we know, they need defensive edge help regardless. I think Chris Paul is a pretty fascinating one. I don't know what his market is. He's been here for 4 years, so our view of him is that 7th round pick who was kind of on the roster, was barely on the roster, and then all of a sudden here he is starting 15 games. If some other team out there, boys, we need offensive line help. This guy started 15 games. He needs help in the run game, but pretty good in pass blocking. I don't know if his market gets too high. I could see him not coming back, but based on what he did, then I would think there's a good chance they'd want him back. But if the market gets to a certain point, they have Brandon Coleman. The rest of the offensive line is obviously set, so I could see them moving on if the market just gets out of hand.
All right, what about another topic we discussed? Is this going to be the year where they kind of go all in on a couple guys via free agency? No, not just like a 1 or 2 year deal, get some guy 33, like they're going to give 4 years, $80 million to some receiver or something.
Yeah, they go after George Pickens.
Yeah,
or something.
is this going to be the year where they make a couple like real splashes? Not Javon Kinlaw, like a real splash.
Right. I was thinking about this the other day. We talk about people like an Adam Peters who, when he gets hired, he's going to be great. He's this, that, and the other. Well, he's never done the job before, right? I mean, you can prepare all you want. You can be the number 2 person sitting next to whoever's making the final decisions. But until you have to do it, you don't know what that's like. And I do wonder what lessons he learned this offseason because of what you just said. I mean, they weren't like uber aggressive the first year, but at least Frankie Louvu, Dorrance Armstrong, Tyler Biadasz, these were younger guys, multi-year deals, all hit, right, to some degree. They didn't do that this last offseason. They just kind of, they made the bigger splashes with those trades, but then they didn't get those guys. I can see Peters going a little bit more all in this time, especially at, say, pass rusher because they desperately need that. And with only 2 draft picks in the top 100, you can't just assume we can all say they should trade down, but we don't know what's going to happen. So it's not like they're going to get a ton of help out of the draft as it stands right now. So they're going to have to get 1 or 2 positions at least where you're like, okay, this is a clear move here to be aggressive. So I think it's probably more likely that they're aggressive in one of those spots. But I think it's going to depend on how they view the needs, the what's available out there, and then what they think they're going to do with the draft.
Back to the coaching, what's your read on what they're likely to do at defensive coordinator? Everybody's fired up for Brian Flores. I don't see him moving laterally. Maybe he doesn't get a head coaching gig, but I just don't see him leaving Minnesota. But what's your take?
Yeah. I mean, I think that, like I said, I think Ulbrich is probably the guy I would want, maybe, or Watts, maybe Raheem Morris, because I don't know how much Dan Quinn's already made one massive change here. I don't know how much more he would want. They're obviously doing their due diligence across the board, bringing in Flores and Jonathan Gannon. I'm with you. I mean, look, there's 20 teams out there that want Flores, I would imagine, or be willing to have that conversation, even ones with a defensive coordinator right now. I don't know how he looks at Washington with the current personnel and says, this is where I want to go. Sure, Washington could have a quick turnaround with Jaden, but I don't know that really makes a ton of sense relative to other possibilities for him. So we'll see on that one. But like I said, at the moment, I'm still leaning towards he hires somebody from his own coaching tree over an outside hire.
So Ben, are you into a new stadium with a roof or without?
Well, can I cut it in the middle there and go for the retractable roof? That to me would be the dream. But I get it. Like they've already spent a lot of money, and that's a lot, more than just a little bit extra to add on. So all things perfect, I would rather have no roof.
Yeah.
Well, let me say it like this: if I'm sitting on my couch, I prefer no roof. Mm-hmm. If I'm at the stadium,
right, you
doing
want the
what
roof.
I have to do,
of course.
Yeah, maybe take the roof. I think one thing, like from our selfish perspective, is that when we go to some stadiums like Detroit, like Vegas, where the press box is inside the stadium, there's no glass protecting us from the elements or the fans or whatever. It's so much more interesting. You feel like you're so much more involved in the game. At Northwest Stadium, we are behind the glass, and you can't quite hear everything the same. It feels like you're a little bit at a distance. So I think the indoor from that perspective would be good. I mean, again, I'm not looking at it just what would be good for me, but I don't know. I'm intrigued by the indoors, but I wish from a pure watching element that they would play outside.
Have you been to the stadium in Minnesota for a game or to SoFi?
I have, yeah. I mean, this year I've been there before, but this year at both great stadiums. And the Minnesota one was like the one road trip I was excited for the actual stadium itself, which is bizarre. The Minnesota one in particular, it looks like a Viking chip, corresponds obviously with the name of the team. It's just great inside with the translucent roof, and that one's already now a few years older. So if they're going to mimic that to some degree, or SoFi's, obviously SoFi's sort of indoor outdoor situation, but yeah, those two are just so beautiful. Right? I mean, the aesthetics. I mean, until we see it over and over again, I don't think we're going to really appreciate like how blah what it is until it's like the scene in the Wizard of Oz where it goes from black and white to color. Mm-hmm. I think that's what's about to happen here in 2030, and I'm pretty excited for whatever they do.
How loud was the Minnesota stadium? Just out of curiosity.
Yeah. I mean, when you can't really have conversations up and down press row, you have to kind of only talk to the people you're next to.
Yeah.
It's an indication of like how loud it gets, and yeah, it was pretty impressive. Obviously, they were going through a tough time at that moment, so maybe it wasn't as loud as it could have been, but 31-0, it was pretty good. The Seattle is like the one place where it's outdoors, but the noise, the way they built it, you keep that in. But for the most part, if you want it to be as loud as possible, you got to go with the dome.
Right. All right, Ben. Appreciate the time, buddy. Have a great
Always
weekend.
appreciate it.
All right,
Yep.
thank you,
too.
pal.
Thanks, guys.
Good talking to you, Ben.
All
Don't
right, bud.
forget to subscribe to his Substack, Last Man Standig.
Yep. Is he still doing the pod? I'm not sure. The pod
so.
I loved. Yeah. Listen to that all the time. Ben's great.
Coming up next, there's a conspiracy theory about the injuries that the 49ers have had and why they continue to have injuries. And it could affect teams like the Washington Commanders. We'll tackle that next here in the Junkies.